Hello, friends. Okay, it might just be super loud in here because, first of all, it's storming outside. Second of all, I have my dishwasher going, so that's another storm. So there's a lot happening, but that's why I'm like leaned over the hill into this mic because it's just like, whew. We are here to review the latest episode of The Real Housewives of Atlanta, season 15, episode, I don't know, but the one that just came on Sunday. I thought that this was a good episode, but we need to review before I can fully say. We pick up the episode, and basically, we're at the point that we left off last week where they're at the table. I'm trying to see if my ears on because it's hot, child. Where they're at the table, and Drew had this whole blowout with Sheree, and now she's walked out and she's outside upset. So we're picking up there. The thing that at the end of the day, we talked about this last week, and basically, I had assessed without hearing more about the situation yet. I was just like, I feel like Drew being upset is not totally and completely about this whole charade thing that just happened at the table. It'll be more so something about Ralph, and I feel like the way that Sheree was responding and kind of gaslighting Drew and not validating her feelings and kind of being dismissive was maybe like reminiscent of how Ralph is, and maybe at this point her and Ralph were in the thick of it. So I had put that all together by myself, just trying to figure some things out. So now we get this episode, and King is basically giving the same analysis, so that was good. But we also get, the confessional where the producer is like, well, is there something going on? They asked Drew, is there something going on that you're not telling the girls about? And she says, it does have to do with Ralph, but she more so says it's because he's out of town. And, previously she had told us that he was in Vegas auditioning to do Chocolate City, which I didn't really care too much about, and I still don't. But she asked some more context to say, basically there was this, I forgot the lady's title, some type of manager or something or whatever that was working on her video shoot, and she was oiling Ralph down, and I guess from there she realized that Ralph had a nice bod or whatever, so she asked him to go to Vegas. There are a lot of pieces in there. Like, even as she was telling the story, I'm like, can we take some pauses because there's some things I need to dissect. Like, this lady was rubbing your man down. You obviously felt some type of way about it at that point. You didn't say anything. Okay. And then we moved even forward to her be like, hey, like, Ralph, you should come to Vegas to audition for Chocolate City. Okay. And it's just like, now he's in Vegas doing it. So we had already got to level 3 of that video game, and I didn't feel like we broke it down. But I don't even really feel like getting into it. That's not what the episode was about. But we can just go ahead and all agree that that's a little strange. So, she, at the end of the day, we all agree that the issue is Ralph. The context of it is fuzzy, but whatever. Ralph is the common denominator, so we'll leave it at that. So, they're outside having this conversation anyway, and Drew is basically telling them, well, she's upset. She's really fired up with Sheree. At this point, Sonya has gone out there. We see that Sonya has a habit of running after the girls. I'm not going to key too much on her about that, but it's just like, as I've said before, I don't know what makes Sonya the friend to do that, I guess, in the group. But it is nice, it's nice that she does it, but it's like, whatever. So she's out there, King is out there, also for some reason. Maybe because her and Drew were doing well at that point, I guess. And then Sheree's out there after being forced to go out there. So we've got 3 people out there. It doesn't make too much sense. A lot of people are trying to do a lot of talking. Drew seems to be almost a little bit hysterical. Like, she's just very overwhelmed, right? And, Sheree's like, okay, well, just give me a minute. Like, let me talk to her. But Drew's not really feeling trying to talk to her. She's kind of like, get this, she starts with the BIT. And Sheree's like, hold on. Like, what's happening now? Like, I'm trying to talk to you, girl. Like, hold on. Like, you're upset. So, everybody stays, because rightfully so. So now I understand, because the B word almost flew up out there. So let's stay and monitor. And, Drew just starts saying a lot of things, part of which I understand, part of which I didn't, so I'm going to try to float the hell on by it, but let's give some type of analysis. She's basically letting them know, like, it's overwhelming and it's been affecting her family because this lady filed this lawsuit and talked to all these blogs and it went public, which it did, and she was trying to defame and embarrass Drew, which it did. So it's just like, that was overwhelming to her. Fine. Sheree feels like, okay, well, girl, I didn't know that it was doing all that, so I apologize. I'm happy that she apologized, but her saying that she didn't know all of that was going on and all of that was happening is weird because she brought up the lawsuit, and we all have social media, so I'm sure we saw the whole world dragging it with Drew. But fine, whatever. Let's move past that as well. And so then, but that's just not enough for Drew, right? So Drew's just like, no, but you just don't understand. And it's just like, no, we don't. We really don't. And we're trying to. But then she's saying, like, it's just more stuff that you guys just don't know that I can't really say. Which was confusing to me. It kind of came as if it was one of those things. When the girls get their lawsuits, it's such a housewives staple now. So when the girls have their legal things and their lawsuits going on, it's always like, well, I can't say. You know what I'm saying? So it kind of gave that, but it was doubled on with like, oh, well, you don't understand. So that was kind of conflicting for me and bothering me because she's like, you don't understand, but she's not giving us any understanding. So, whatever. And then basically we kind of sum it up with her talking about the part that I do understand, where she's just like, well, yeah, the lawsuit's only for $1,000, but we've already paid that lady. And I'm understanding that argument because obviously the lady is suing her saying, well, yeah, I did the work. We're going to assume she got some type of compensation. Drew just said that, but the lady's saying it wasn't enough. It wasn't the compensation that she was due. So she wants an additional $1,000. And Drew, which I talked about last time, is of the mindset, well, we already gave her some money. And so I don't want to give her more. She's just trying to embarrass us. She's trying to harass us, blah, 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 blah. I don't think anybody is lost on that. We're lost on the other stuff that Drew says she can't say, but fine, let's just talk about the finances. I see both sides. So I can understand Drew saying, I already paid her and now my pride is here. And it's just like, this lady's trying to embarrass her. We already, and trying to embarrass us. We gave her money. I'm not giving her $1,000 more dollars. I get that. I understand the stubbornness of that. And I can understand, I just get it. You know what I'm saying? But I also understand Miss Kenya talking about some girl. Let's do a math problem. How many of us are here? You know what I'm saying? 8. Great. So, like, what is 1,000 divided by 8? Which I did the math myself. And it's about $150, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not going to do the math right now. We're busy. But, I think it's about $150 per girl. So, that's reasonable. Like, they probably split the bill inside for the dinner, so they can probably tax on that $150 for Drew. So, I also understand that, and I think Kenya, was being very, I think it was playful and it was shady, but not to the point where it's like she was trying to egg Drew on. I think she was actually adding some reasonableness to it. Like, well, girl, like, you're doing all this stressing and you're out here crying and snotting up your nose in Portugal over this big lawsuit or whatever that you're saying is affecting you so deeply. But it's just like, the reason, you've already said it, Drew, like, the girl sued you to bother you and you're bothered. So it seems like she succeeded. So pay her the money and let her go away. So I see both sides, you know what I'm saying? And I would just love to move on from that. While that's happening outside, obviously, we had the instance where Candy was inside, and as soon as Drew, stormed off, and Candy was like, okay, and scene. And she got up to go to the bathroom because she's had the stomach issues or whatever. So that occurred on the inside. And then Marlo also was like, well, can we just pay the man off? So it was interesting to see Marlo and Kenya have that same idea. So whatever. Then the group finally comes back together. Drew's back at the table. Eyes are all red and puffy. Poor girl. And, Sonya's being Sonya, and she's breaking it down to the group. And, again, I'm not going to key on her too much because, she was trying to add some rationale to it. And she's just like, she's going through more than she can say. And it's just like, okay, great, Sonya, okay, all right, okay, okay. So, they get that out of the way. eventually we get to the point where everybody's sitting down and Sonya does something again, which I actually do have something positive to say. She added in her 2 cents, which she called it. And she's just like, I do want to say while we're on the topic that we as a group, I like that she didn't point it to anybody. She was like, everybody as a group needs to work on just listening more when one of the other people is having their moment and saying what they need to say. We need to listen more as a group. I appreciated that. On the other side of it, same sentiment. Like, I don't know what makes Sonya the person, but I appreciate it. You know what I'm saying? So I hope it's not lost on anybody that I'm giving her that acknowledgement. But I also have a little bit of a question. That's all. That's all. And I did think that it was funny that Kenya came back and was just like, because Sonya was like, that's just my 2 cents. Because I can only imagine. They didn't really show the group, but I can only imagine that the group had that same sentiment. Like, girl, why is Sonya the one? Like, they probably gave, like, good advice, but and she was like, "That's just my 2 cents." So I imagine that that's how that interaction went. And then Kenya was just like, "Well, I think I have a jar. You can put that 2 cents in." So listen, I think that was fun shade, and I think that this is a Kenya that we've been asking for, right? Like the shady, fun Kenya, and like the Kenya that causes conversation or whatever. But we're also gonna get to that a little bit later because Miss Courtney has some things to say about Miss Kenya. Then they move on at the table, and they're talking about Candy not being around as much. And I do like, because previously it's kind of felt like it's been like a storyline building thing with Candy. It's just been feeling like that at the first half of the season. It didn't feel like this with this because even Kenya chimed in, was just like, yeah, girl, you haven't been around much. So I'm saying that to say I like that the conversation was productive because, Candy chimed in to say, okay, yeah, I haven't been around, but it's because I'm working. Like, there's nothing else to it. Like, I'm working. And another instance where I can see both sides of it, like, I understand where Candy's coming from. She's a Taurus. Like, I'm a Taurus. I say it all the time. And it's just like Taurus like stability, and more specifically, they like financial stability. So that's the way that I was looking at it. Like, she likes financial stability. She likes to work because that's what provides her money. But she added another level to it, and it was basically like, when you have the money and you lose it, then it puts you on a mindset where it's like, where I want to work even harder so I don't have to go back to that low. And that makes sense. And I like that the group seemed to be receptive of that, but I like that they also push back and were like, well, you still need to make time for yourself, and other things. So I think that was a productive conversation. I think both sides of the conversation heard each other, and that's the type of stuff that we want to see on Housewives. And that was the group dinner in Portugal, child. And we've now talked about that last episode and this episode. So it was a ton to talk about. That's why I'm kind of rushing through it. But we've been here for so long. So let's move on. So then the next morning, we have kind of just like Drew having a conversation about what happened the night before. The ladies are basically preparing to go. They have like an itinerary for the day where they're gonna go get stuff at the market for the chef to make, and then they're gonna go to like a pottery class or whatever. We get this thing that we get with Atlanta a lot where all the ladies are late. We get this at least every other episode, and we definitely get it every season. So everybody's late getting on the bus. The key thing is that Kenya's late, and it's raining. I guess it had been raining the whole trip. Fast forward, Kenya comes downstairs in her slippers, and she slips and she falls outside. And it definitely looked like it was a hard fall, right? And I was watching Speak On It, as I always do, as I always mention. And I don't know if I really noticed it from watching. I think you could, but I didn't notice it. But Candy mentioned that the flooring at the hotel was stone, and it was also wet, obviously. So her slipping and falling on stone can be is very dangerous, obviously. And again, it looked like it was a very hard fall. So that was unfortunate. That was hard to watch. I feel like they showed it like 100 times, and I kind of was like, I don't want to keep watching this. But the key thing there was Courtney's reaction to it. And I thought that this was interesting. She's having this conversation with Drew at the bar because now everything's held up, and it's like, well, now we really can't go anywhere. And she's just like, well, she kind of tiptoes into it. She's just like, mumbling almost. And she's just like, well, the universe has a funny way of doing things, as if that was going to stick. And it kind of felt like, because Drew was still kind of drying her tears from the night before, kind of felt like Drew's head perked up a little bit and was like, what you talking about, Willis? And she's just like, well, like, and Drew's kind of like, and she's like, well, like, this is the second time that King has been carried out on a stretcher on a group event. And it's just like, the universe has a way of like getting negative energy out of the way, clearing negative energy. And I'm like, okay, I understand what you're saying. I don't know why you're saying it, but I'm understanding what you're saying 5 hours later. Cool. So I'm kind of like moving on. But she continues to speak on it. And she's like, yeah, like, like karma. And she kind of like, she compares it to like basically Kenya being carried out on a stretcher and being sick previously and now slipping and falling as karma for being a mean girl. Another thing that needs to be dissected. It's like, first of all, I I would never imply that somebody having physical or any type of injury or any type of sickness, I would never imply that that is as a result of karma. So that was a very weird thing to say, and I am happy that Drew pushed back on that. I want to say that this is the first instance that we've seen her and Courtney, cousin Courtney, have like a difference in opinion. So it was interesting to see, and it was nice to see Drew disagree with it. Obviously, it was only a confessional, and it's not like she really said it to Courtney and held her accountable. And I'm interested to see if she said anything to Kenya about it. But it was interesting to see that they did have a difference in opinion to that. Second thing, Mean Girl. In this specific dynamic, I don't know where she feels like Kenya was a mean girl to her. I guess she still feels some type of way about Kenya saying, please don't touch me. But even if we go back to that instance, and I did rewatch it, Kenya was very, it was pointless. Anybody, and no matter what way they tell you, if somebody asks you not to touch them, it's going to feel pointed. It's not a comfortable thing to hear, right? Like somebody's like, please don't touch me. It's kind of like, oh, you're gonna feel some type of way about it regardless. But when Kenya said it, she was just like, I know you like to touch, and we're not there yet. And keyword on the word yet. You know what I'm saying? Like for me, when I heard that, it wasn't a complete shutdown. She's like, girl, we're not. I know you're touchy. We're not there yet. Like, please just don't touch me. So I didn't take that as mean girlism. And then they had even talked about it more at the dinner, which we talked about last episode. So it's just like, we've already had this conversation, Sheree Jr., so I just don't get why it's such an issue, but whatever. So that was just weird to me. Yeah, I don't know why I say that, but I think that she thought Drew was going to pick it up and be like, yeah, 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 but no. So anywho, Kenya has to go to the hospital. Candy ends up going with her. The ladies go on this trip to the market, which was a trip to the market, and then they go to the pottery class, which was a pottery class. So they end up having this conversation, and Marlo's talking about her date, and at this moment, Mayetta proceeds to tell her, like, I didn't like how you kind of took Kenya's shine away when she was talking about Roy, and like you said that he was in your DMs. I it was weird hearing, like, I don't even know where that kind of came from Mayetta. It's fine that she has that opinion, and I guess it is a fair opinion to have, but I think it was awkward. And also because I didn't feel any type of way. I've said this as well. I didn't really feel any type of way when Kenya brought up the Roy thing. Like, I didn't think it was a nasty thing that she did. I didn't think she was trying to be shady. I didn't think that she was trying to start anything. So I just, yeah, that part was weird to me. But then, Kenya, I mean, not Kenya, Marlo did push back, and she's like, well, Kenya did the same thing with Sheree, which she didn't. And we talked about the difference in those two situations last episode, so I'm not going to get back into that. Another weird conversation where I understood Mayetta by, it was random to me. She was basically saying, I guess some of the ladies were equating, Marlo's new man, what's his name, Scott Lee, to be like a Tinder thing, and I guess they were trying to say like it's like Tinder, like the app. So it's kind of like a quick date type of thing. Like it just happened, it's fresh and it's new, is what I was understanding them to be saying. And basically, Mayetta was asserting her opinion where it was just like, well, it was just odd to us because you were already bringing him around. Like he came around for the little luncheon they had, the couples luncheon, and she just like was kind of trying to say like, well, what, if I had just met a guy or whatever, I wouldn't be bringing him around the group like that. But I guess we do things differently. I guess maybe that was supposed to be a read or a genuine opinion. I don't know. Again, like I said, something I can understand, I guess, but I don't know why it was being asserted. So that was that. Lunch was really weird if you guys aren't picking up on that. Another thing that happens is that it seems as though Sheree probably texted Martell under the table and was like, hey, haven't heard from you since episode 1. The producers are asking what's the tea, and the ladies asked about you last episode, so give me a call. And let's act like we're having a phone call while I'm on this trip because you're supposed to be my man and you should probably be giving me a call while I'm out of the country. So Martell gives Sheree a call, allegedly. I don't know. I wasn't there. But, Martell gives Sheree a call, and if that's not enough, he starts reciting some type of lines, and he's basically like, well, we haven't gone this wild. We don't usually go this long without having sex. And it's like, first of all, that's a grown woman you're talking to in front of a group of other grown women on a grown women's trip in grown women public on grown woman national TV being watched by other grown women. So it's just like, have some decorum. Like, I don't know what type of scripted conversation they decided to have. I'm pretty sure they set the phone call up. I don't know if they set the substance of the phone call up, but I wish Sheree would have screened that before it happened, because there's no way that he should have been saying that on her phone at all. But whatever. So that was another thing that happened. I don't, ugh, girl. The final big thing that happens at the lunch, more weirdness. So basically, the ladies are now attempting to put this battery in Drew's back to say like, oh, well, Candy, when you went out upset the other night, Candy was like, and scene, like, how do you feel about that? And Drew starts off by being like, well, maybe she was doing the same thing you did, Sheree. And Sheree automatically gets defensive. She's like, well, we're not talking about me, we're talking about Candy. And we're like, we know, girl, trying to create a thing against Candy, we get it. But Drew's like, well, no, though, but like, maybe, she didn't understand the severity of it, just like you didn't. So Drew's taking a very rational approach to it, to them trying to put a battery in her back. And then, of course, they get into confessionals like they always do, Dumb, Dumb, and Dumberer. And they're just like, maybe Drew's afraid of Candy and afraid to approach Candy, blah, blah, blah. So we get that silliness again. We're never going to get enough of that. So now it's just like, they're needing Drew to beef with Candy over something that just isn't that substantial. They're creating this thing, right? And I think we talked about this a tiny bit last episode, I think. Or maybe I've been talking about it in my head for a while. But needless to say, there's been a ton of chatter on Twitter where people are just like, well, if Drew's upset, then Candy should have gone and checked on her, and she's not a real friend. I just want to do a compare and contrast here. So, do you guys remember when everybody was talking about how, Candy was trying to hold Sonya accountable for like Courtney talking mess behind her back, and she was just basically like, when Courtney was calling me ghetto, what did you say? And everybody had this argument where it was just like, well, why do you think that Candy and Sonya are so close? Like, why are they supposed to be close friends to where Sonya has to defend Candy? And then Sonya gets on Carlos King, and she's talking about, yeah, we're not even that close, and she wants me to pick sides and da 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 da. So let's keep that in the back of your mind. Who the hell said that Candy and Drew were best pals? Whoever said that? Whoever said that? Let's use the same logic you guys have been using this season. Whoever said that they were best gal pals? So why does Candy need to go check on Drew? Especially if she felt like it wasn't that serious. Where does that obligation come from? So we're going to use that same analysis and use that same mindset because I genuinely want to know, where does the obligation come from where Candy is supposed to be this just magnificent friend to Drew and going to check on her because she's crying and there's snot running down her nose. That's what I would like to know. So I'm going to leave you guys with that question, and I'm going to come back to it. Never. But I just want to leave you guys with that. That leads us to, essentially, we get the whole story about Kenya being in the hospital and what happened with that. There's another weird moment where, oh my God, everything was just so weird, right? There's another weird moment where, like, which one do I want to touch on first? I'll get past this one first. Basically, Kenya and Candy are in the hospital all day, and was it Marlo? I believe it was Marlo that made the comment like, "Oh, well, if Candy's so worldwide, why do they have to wait in the hospital so long?" It's just so silly that I really don't even want to talk about it. I'm not gonna talk about it. It's very silly. And maybe if anybody agree with that, let's play it like this. If anybody agree with that, let's couple on to your other homework assignment. Here's some extra credit. If anybody agree with what Marlo said, just comment in the comment section, and then I'll talk about it separately. But I'm going to assume that we all have a little bit more sense than that. Okay, so then the next silly thing that happened was basically, now we've summoned it up, and I think it was Marlo again, and added on with Sheree maybe, and maybe a little bit of Sonya. They kind of share a brain, so we can just group them together. It's fine. There's this assertion that the group gets along better and there's no drama because Candy and Kenya are not around, and part of that is true. You know why? Because they're not here for you guys to create drama with, like you've been doing all season. And it's also weird to even make that assertion because you're still doing it even though they're not here. Like, you're still bringing them up in negative light in order to create drama, even though they're not here. So I want to understand how their brains work. I keep saying it. Like, y'all are acting like when Candy and Kenya come around, they're starting issues with people. And even production did these flashbacks to these issues that have happened this season and these conflicts that have involved Candy and Kenya without giving credence to the fact that they didn't initiate those conflicts. The ladies in that room at that weird ass lunch did. Everything was weird. Like, honestly, if there wasn't so much dialogue and so much happening, y'all know I like to be like this on the Twitter during silly parts of the episode. So if it hadn't been so much goofy stuff happening at that point, I wouldn't have even called any of this. But there was just so much craziness occurring. So that happened. Finally, we get everybody back to the hotel. King is back. She's gonna go to her room and do her thing and rest. Thank God nothing's broken, she said, so that's good, even though they spent all day in the hospital. Candy has to leave for work the next day, so this is her final night. So the girls are gonna do like a girls' night in the hotel, and Sheree has another phone call with Martell talking about it. This one felt more, I struggle to use the word authentic with Sheree and Martell, but this one felt more normal. And then Marlo has a conversation with Scott Lee. This one felt real. Like, this one is when I watched and I'm like, okay, I think they actually do kind of like each other, because they got on the phone and they kind of kikied a lot. There's nothing really serious there, but I'm going to note it because it was happening kind of in the transitional scene. But it did seem like they have some liking for each other, which made it even kind of more awkward that Monyetta brought up that point earlier, because it's like, well, they probably do kind of like on each other. But whatever, that's all I really have to say about that. The girls get to this girls' night, and now the battery that has been put in Drew's back about Candy has to get activated. And so, everything's going well, but, Drew has to bring it up. And she brings it up, and she's kind of stuttering her way into it. And Candy's just immediately like, yeah, I said and seen when you walked out. Like, what is there to discuss? What are we discussing? Like, what are we discussing? And, you know, it really felt like a productive conversation, I'm going to say. Like, Drew got her feelings out, which I think are valid. And, you know, she was basically saying, you know, this is serious for me. Same stuff she said to Sheree, you know. But the difference was, for me, was that Candy was able to sit back and be like, okay, like, you know, like she said her piece, and she's just like, you know, I feel like this group can be a little bit uptight. I didn't think it was that serious. She also said in her confessional she didn't think it was that serious. I will say, holding Candy accountable, I don't like when people bring things to their friends and the friend that's on the receiving end is going to tell you whether it's serious enough or not, because that's not your place. So I will say that Candy should just keep that to herself. But I do like that Candy was able to say, but I apologize because I wasn't trying to drag you. I wasn't trying to take it there. I wasn't trying to do that. So I do like that she was able to get that out of the way, and they were able to squash that, even though, you know, Sheree and them wanted to be this big beef. And, you know, I think at the end of the day, and even on Speak On It, like Candy was talking about it and she gave more context to it. Because I'll say this, like when she did say the and scene thing, it wasn't a big deal to me either. Like, I took it the way that she said it. Like, she was just like, this big dramatic moment happened. Drew storms out and she's just like, okay, and scene, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. Like, that really was just it. Like, it wasn't a big key. It's not I'm not saying it's a positive thing. It's obviously not a positive thing, and it bothered Drew, obviously. But it's not this big, huge thing where it's like, okay, fight. Drew and Candy fight. Like, it just wasn't a big deal. So just like I said, like, I the battery in her back. Why? But you know, I'm glad they got that out. Even though Candy, you know, she kind of justified it a bit, but then she did say on Speak On It, you know, basically what made that moment what it was and made her react the way it was surprise production. And basically, I guess the ladies have been sitting there having some type of conversation, but nothing was really going on. And production stopped the conversation, was like, okay, y'all need to get to the meat of it. Like, nothing's happening here. You know, overproducing the show. So we're back to having issues. So then when they got back on camera, they immediately, like Sheree and Drew kind of immediately got into this back and forth. And then all of a sudden, Drew was like crying and upset and storming out. So Candy's analysis of it was like, okay, what just happened? Like, is Drew acting? Like, is she doing this? She literally said, is she like trying to put on for production? Like, why is she doing this? So it makes more sense now why she said that. And now I really care even less. I just don't think that it was a big deal. So I'm glad that they were able to, like I said, to have that conversation. But then they lead into another conflict because, you know, I guess, you know, cameras were down, so we don't get a lot of context as to why this conversation even came up. The girls are basically talking about the trip that they had when they had Cynthia's party, her bachelorette party, and Bolo came. And this started on the bus when they were on their way to the market. And this is where I am going to side with production and side with the show, because I've seen a lot of discourse and a lot of tweets where it's like, well, why are we back to talking about the Bolo thing? And y'all are missing the point. Y'all are missing the point, and I'm here to break it down. For starters, they started talking about the Bolo thing because of Courtney, somebody who wasn't even there. So I don't take that as a produced moment at all, because the Bolo and the Courtney of it all have no connection besides the fact that she has family that stays 6 miles down the road from the Airbnb that they stayed at where Bolo was at. So that's why it came up. She was kikiing about it. She's like, my family stays 6 miles away from where the Bolo thing happened. So it's already a topic that day. Leading into them getting into the girls' night, I guess somehow it came up again. Like I said, cameras were down and only camera phones were going. From what Candy said, Marlo was using her camera phone and Mayetta was using hers. But the footage that was used on the show was Marlo's phone, is what it said. And basically it comes back up, and I guess Drew was having a conversation about what happened that night, which was a big topic that season. And she was saying something to the effect of, well, she was just me. And Candy's like, well, no, like, y'all kissed. And not everything was shown, but from Speak On It, Candy was just saying, like, there became this big back and forth where she was like, no, like, you actually did kiss Latoya. And she, like, had, Kenya co-signed it, and she even called Shamia on the phone who co-signed it. And even Marlo was like, I saw it in that room. So everybody's saying that they saw it. And Drew, for whatever reason, is just like, no, that didn't happen. So that's why it becomes this big narrative. And that's why she ends up having this back and forth with Candy, which we're going to see more about next episode, because Candy ultimately was just like, okay, well, girl, I'm leaving. I'm going back to my room. And I'm guessing this became a big conflict because now Drew's calling Candy a liar, and Candy obviously doesn't like that. So now Candy's coming out with the tea. So again, I don't see it as a produced moment because it wasn't something that kind of came out for the show, right? Like, this kind of came out over a natural kiki conversation while cameras were down. And the only reason that Candy is talking about it now is because she got called a liar by Drew. And she's like, but girl, what are you talking about? Everybody's saying the same thing. And then it happens, it's relevant because it's happening in tandem with the fact that Drew is getting this divorce. And Drew has this, scene in the movie with this girl. And now there's this storyline coming up with Drew and Ty. So all of these things are happening at the same time, but they're technically unrelated, but there's a common denominator of Drew and other women. So I think that people are missing the point. I think that people feel like, oh, they're talking about the Bolo thing, that's low-hanging fruit, and they shouldn't be talking about that. I don't think that that's a producer thing at all. I don't think that that's a show thing at all. That just happened. And that makes it interesting to me that these things are kind of tying together naturally like that, because it's like, ooh, hold on, because now the common thread really is like, now why is Drew lying? Like, that kind of becomes the big thing. Like, why is Drew lying, right? And now, I'm ending this episode how I ended last episode, trying to come up with an analysis for why Drew is doing what Drew do. And basically, I feel like she may be lying, if she's lying allegedly, but she most likely is lying. She may be lying because her family is like religious, right? Like her mom's a pastor or something like that. So that may have something to do with it. Like, I don't know. But at the end of the day, I just feel like the audience that's like, why are we talking about this? You guys are missing the point. And again, I get it. We're triggered. We have trauma in Atlanta. We have these overly produced moments. We just saw one at dinner with Sheree and Drew, as Candy told us. So I get it. We are traumatized. We have PTSD. So we always feel like they're doing weird stuff. But I don't feel like this Drew and girls thing is a weird thing. So I'm even checking myself, because I also said it. Like, I don't think I said it on here. But in talking to friends, I'm like, why are we talking about Drew? And why do we have this storyline with Drew and other women? And now I get it. So I'm going to bite my tongue on it for now. And I want y'all to come together with me. Okay, understand what's going on here and realize that these things are happening for a reason. And let's just let it play out and let's see what happens. Okay? But those things said, I thought that this was a good episode. I thought the time where Kenya and Candy were away wasn't as great. I think they're needed. Sorry, Marlo, Sonia, and Sheree. I think they're needed. So you guys can try to make issues with them, right? Everybody gets along while they're not around, so maybe we need them around so you guys can make them your storyline like you typically do. So I thought that piece of the puzzle was missing for a good portion of the episode, but I thought it was a good episode, and I like how we're naturally leading into some interesting stuff with Drew, and we're going to see what happens next. And this episode was really long, and I gotta go. I'll see you guys next time.